Anyways, this wonderful record intrigues me because it starts off talking about one of the stone books called the Gododin. Gododin. It is called Teutha De Dan-an or Teuth Der-Gana, or the covenants of the night and the day, which can never be broken. I'm not going to go into this part right now because it does get into quite a lot of, how should I say, speculative history. There are 3 pages, next 3 pages. One is, you can see it starts off the deluge and Noah's flood happened AM 1657, sun, moon, star system 2362, or in BC about 2360 he writes. And he has a history, the kingdom of Abraham, kingdom of Ios in Israel, kingdom of Athens, the Jubilee or interest into Canaan, destruction of Troy, etc., etc. He goes through a history in the Middle East. But it's his 4th page that's always intrigued me, and I'm going to read it to you here. It's taken me one trip to Peru to follow up on this, but I want to just discover something today as I was doing the kind of background research to what I'm going to talk about today. I'll read this. The cornerstone of the Golden Continent, now called Easter Island, near the Tropic of Capricorn, about 2,300 miles from Chile, on which at the time of the deluge were 3 perpetual fires, which went out at the deluge. The De Dan-an, or Titans, to the number of 2,500, saved themselves on this now island, famous Titanlan mountain. As they soon discovered the place was too small to dwell, they built ships and sailed due east for 9 weeks. When they found land, which they named Land Titan, Terra del Fuego, in parenthesis. 3 years after the deluge, 2365, they built a city which they named Titicaca. Here they dwelled until 2700 under the sun, moon, star system, the greater part moving northward over the highlands to Cuzco and the headwaters of the Amazon, where they dwelled another 300 years, till about 3000 sun, moon, star. From here, one tribe went north, the other east, following the great river to another ocean, the Atlantic. These tribes meet again at Tenochtitlan, Mexico. Here they dwelled for 111 years, 3111, sun, moon, star. They had to abandon the place after building many cities because of a plague. Interesting timing on this. From here, they spread all over the North Country, now and founded Azatlan, the most famous city that ever was built on the face of the earth in 3161. As no more than 1/3 of the people could reside in the city, they established the law of exchange by turns and the landmark laws by which another generation could discover this heavenly Azatlan. When they had penetrated eastward to the Great Lakes, they built several cities, and one was called Ar-om-og, A-R-O-M-O-G-G, near Lake Og, now called Ontario, 3681 sun and stars. After this, many ships crossed the sea eastward to Bretland, or Greenland, and from there to Britain, Glasmirland. This was 3714 sun and stars, about 1,000 years before Christ. They settled at first in Titan, or Timain. They were the first settlers. From here they went southeast, and as I mentioned before, this is one of these terrible lessons that doesn't go anywhere. I don't have the next papers or not series of papers, it just drops us right there. But when I first read this years ago, now 30-some years ago, I was very intrigued by it, and I decided I wanted to go to Peru to follow up on this. But before I tell you that part of the story, today in researching this, I went on the internet and I put in runes under Lake Titicaca, because there is no city today called Titicaca. Just, of course, Lake Titicaca between Peru, or borders both Peru and Bolivia. Well, I discovered that 10 years ago that a Belgian archaeologist discovered a temple and a 1,500 foot wall, all kinds of pottery, but under the lake. So there's obviously a large, just reading here, Titicaca is 3,300 square miles. So under there, they've discovered this temple. 9,000. Oh, that was interesting. 9,360 square meter building. 9,360 square meter building is under the lake. It's only just starting to be explored now, so it just kind of indicates that what Roberts was writing, to me it indicates that what Roberts was writing 150, 160 years ago is now showing much of it or parts of it as being true. The part I was interested in going to Peru was there's another paper which I'll read. It's one that'll certainly create all kinds of speculation with historians, but it's very interesting about how they're connected with Prince Madoc and Prince Howell from North Wales are connected to Michael Capac and Mamawala in coming up with Lake Titicaca, starting the Incan race, but I'll speak of that later. I went down to Peru in 1983, I believe it was, and spent a couple days in Lima, but my intention was to go to Cuzco, and just because he's mentioned Cuzco a number of times, there's one paper that says that the Druid relics left England in let me rephrase that, left Wales in 1184, Prince Howell, Prince Madoc, and they took the Druid relics to Cuzco, and because Cuzco that time had the longest elongation of the magnetic poles, they discovered the secret place to deposit these Druid relics. So on my intuitive journey that I've spoken of, I decided I wanted to go there and discover the Druid relics. Well, I did spend 10, 12 days, 14 days up in Cuzco, Machu Picchu, went to a number of the incredible ruins nearby. At the one discovery, one of the things I found was at the Museum of Archaeology, I believe that was the name of it, back in 1983 at Cuzco. Very, very poorly maintained, no money. Lighting was terrible. Display cabinets, just one or two little lights and not much. You couldn't see well into the different cabinets. But in one corner of one, I saw a cracked bowl. The bowl was about 4 inches across, but it was broken in two. But I noticed all around the rim of it were runic writing. What is runic writing doing in South America? It was obviously runic writing. You could see the writing. I took a picture of it, but because it was glass, because it was dark, I've not been able to locate that. It never did turn out very well. But I've never gone back to re-photograph it. But there was runic writing, and it had a little handwritten note saying 12th century with a question mark behind it. I don't know what kind of scientific method they used, but it was obviously not overly certain, but they put a 12th century question mark. So that was one little thing. He also spoke of Roberts, John Hugh Roberts, talked of great tunnels underneath the Andes, chariots of the gods. He's written about this a lot, about the tunnels all the way down through the Andes. Well, I met in Cuzco one day, I met a young gentleman who was helping out the native Quechuan people sell their handicrafts on the streets, and he was actually helping them with their finances, their banking, and so on. He was a master's degree in engineering, but no jobs, so he was dedicating his time to helping out. And I talked to him, we talked for a while, his English was superb, and he, oh yeah, Kurt Vonnegut, he kind of laughed at that, and he said, yeah, you know, the guy's pretty out there. But, you know, there is a story. Have you got a couple hours? And I said, yeah, I've got a couple hours. He says, come on, let's go for a walk up past, and I will pardon my terrible, I never can pronounce the name, but up past the Panther ruins above Cuzco. I'll bring this up later when I have it in front of me. Anyways, we walked up past that, and about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile past those ruins, was a massive boulder. I mean, it was good 24, 26 feet long, 14, 16 feet wide, 14 to 18 feet high. Carved. Not the whole thing, but you can see the top was all carved. I did go up, there was 3 or 4 of them. I did go up on one and photograph the top of it. But this particular one, he said, the elders, Quechuan, the shamans and the medicine people and the elders, they would go underneath this rock, and they said that there was, you could go to, what happened was that the rock that we went to, the front was down at an angle like this, about a 3-foot section, 1.5 to 3 feet at parts, broken off of the main part, and it was facing down at a very 45-degree angle. But you could look underneath and you could see the beautifully intricately carved, and it had been at one time an entrance to a cave, to the caves. But over the eons, in this case, over about 80 years, 50 years, they had opened up a passageway of hardened earth that went down through where the crack was, the 2 stones that had been split, and they could enter through there. Well, this young man was telling me that in 1938, I believe it was, that the army, the Peruvian army, which had 1 plane, there was no air force, they blew up, they bombed this rock because so many tourists were going down into this magnificent carved front entrance to the underworld, and were never coming back. So the government decided they would bomb it, and then people, the tourists, wouldn't lose their lives or go somewhere else. Well, he said, these elders tell me that from this position, which is about 2.5 miles, 3 miles to downtown Cuzco, that they travel from there in tunnels to the temple, the base of the Temple of the Sun, which is now, of course, under a church in Cuzco. But they say that they do ceremonies underneath the original Temple to the Sun. I didn't have any spelunking material, so I was unable to go on there myself, but here was a skeptic of Von Gonnegut's belief that chariots of God were those great tunnels under the Andes, and yet here he is saying, well, as far as I know, the elders do go 2.5 miles. That's not a great distance, but at the same time, it's very intriguing that maybe there are much more elaborate tunnels underneath. So there's, as I say, this has always been an intuitive journey. It's not been intellectual, trying to disprove his writings. I was following up my feelings on it, and I definitely believe that he was onto something, whether he channeled it or whether he did get these stories off of all these stone tablets that he was shown in Cornwall. I don't really know, but he was a learned gentleman He was a dedicated person to telling the mysteries of life, of history, and just one more for me today, just looking at this on the my iPhone or my Huawei phone here, finding out that there are underwater temple, massive, 10,000 square meter temple underneath the Lake Titicaca. That's just one building. And how many more are there? So hopefully within the near future they'll be able to use sonogram and underwater radar and map out the city that Roberts writes about being built there 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago.